Hi, I'm Amy from Softwind Crafting. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator coming to you from my homestead cabin in South Texas. The measurements and directions for today's card can be found in the description below, as well as a link to my Stampin' Up! Website. So let's get started. Today we're going to be using the Blossoms in Bloom stamp set. It's a polymer set, which means it's clear, see-through, and you can see to where you're stamping. And it has this large bundle of blossoms that are all together, as well as some individual flowers. It does come as a bundle with the many layered blossom dies. We're not going to be using them in the card today, but I will show you one that I made with it. This does like a great outline of the blossoms themselves, but if you wanted to create more of a layered look, you can also use this. So you would stamp the set, die cut this piece out, then die cut this piece out, and then you can create this 3-layered blossom set. It looks really fantastic. All right, so this is the card that we're going to be making today. This is a gatefold card, and I made the square rather large because I really wanted to showcase the flowers. And so it opens up like this, and then you have a place where you can write your message inside. Okay? All right, so let's get started. We're going to start off, I'm going to have my paper over here. We're going to start off with the base, which is a piece of just Jade. And this is at 8.5 by 5.5, and I scored it at 2 1/8, and then I flipped it and scored it at 2 1/8 again to create my gatefold. So I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to fold and get some crisp edges. You really want to get this good and flat so that your card stays closed. And so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of making sure that everything's lining up, and there you go. All right. All right, the colors that we're going to be stamping with today are Mint Macaron, Just Jade, which is one of the new in colors from this year, and Pretty Peacock, which is the in color from last year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by creating my own background for the panels. And so you need 2 pieces of Whisper White cardstock, okay, and they are at 2 by 5 3/8. Okay, so 2 inches this way, 5 3/8 this way, and they're going to sit as the panels on the front of the card. And since I didn't have any pattern paper that kind of matched the Just Jade, I wanted to go ahead and create my own. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Pretty Peacock, and I'm going to use my block, one of my clear blocks, as a stamp instead of using a stamp itself, because it'll create a great texture. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink up my block, and I'm going to stamp off on my grid paper just because it is very dark. It's pretty inky. So then I'm going to just kind of start stamping around my card. Okay, the cardstock. And so now I'm going to get the other piece. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to stamp off, and then I'm going to just kind of use up those inky spots that are still on my block. Okay. All right, so I'm going to clean that off. Now let me close my ink because I have a tendency to accidentally get my fingers into things. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the Just Jade, but let me clean my block quick because I don't want to transfer that ink into my new ink pad. Okay. Like that. All right, so I'm going to wipe that off. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the Just Jade and ink off. Oh, that was very inky. Let me ink off again. Okay, and so then I'm going to just kind of stamp off. And I like how it created this beautiful edge to my cardstock. So let me ink up again, stamp off. This one is really inky. So there you go. We have now created our own background paper that matches the colors exactly that we're going to be using in our card. All right, so now what I'm going to do is we're going to work on creating the blossoms for our set. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our piece of Whisper White, and this measures at 3.5 by 3.5. I'm going to take my stamp set of the large blossoms, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it down this way, and I'm going to ink my blossoms from the top, because this is a large stamp set and I want to make sure it gets good coverage. And you can see I already got some kind of lines on there. All right, so here we go. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm just going to kind of position it to where I can have a lot of flowers on there. And I'm going to give it a good firm step. And there we go. I really love how this stamp set turns out. Okay. All right, so our next step is to add some leaves. And what I'm going to do is I took the leaf stamp from the set, and I'm going to stamp it in mint macaron. So you can see I can have the old style for that. I'm kind of slowly redoing my ink pads, but now I'm going to add some leaves to this on the edges. Okay, and now what I would like to do is with the smaller flowers, I would like to go ahead and add them in just Jade, okay, around the edges. So here's the smaller flower set. I'm going to ink it up in just Jade, and I'm just now going to start filling in some of the white space. I don't care that the whole flower doesn't show up, but I do want to kind of fill it in. And there are some spaces between some of the flowers that I do want to add a little flower there and a little flower there. And this is just because I like to fill it all in. All right. And now what I'm going to do is that there are two insides for the flowers included in the stamp set. This one with the lots of little dots is for the larger flower, and then you have this small dot that's for this, these are for the larger flowers, this one's for the smaller flower. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this large one in just Jade, and I'm going to stamp the inside of my flowers and see if I make sure I get that to stick good. I'm having a little bit of problems, and I think it's because I need to clean my blocks there. And I like how I can do this and blend all the flower colors together. And so now for the small flower, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the mint macaron, and I'm going to fill in the small flower. Okay, so I have a small flower there, the center. I have another small flower over here, and then I have this one where you can partially see the center, so I'm going to get that one there too. So there you go. Now we've done the outside part of our card. What I'd like to do is, before I put all these stamps away, is I'd like to go ahead and stamp my flowers for my inside of my card, the card inside base, which is at 4 by 5 1/4. So hang on just a second while I clean my stamps so I can restamp, because I don't want to re-ink them. All right, I'm back. So now what I'm going to do is start with Pretty Peacock, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment. And I'm using the Sure Do Miss You. Oops. Let's make sure that sticks pretty well to my block. Okay. And I'm going to kind of like, I like having mine kind of towards the top, not really towards the center of my card, just because I like to have an area to do messaging. Okay, so there we go. And now I'm going to add my flowers, and I'm going to do them also in Pretty Peacock, and I'm going to put them on the corners. So I'm going to start with this, and I want it almost all the way on, but I'm stamping off as well. Okay. And then I'm going to come down here to the bottom, and I'm going to add one flower. Okay. And now we're going to add in just Jade the center of the card, the center of the flower, I should say. So let me get the dot, and I'm just going to stamp it in there. Oops, I didn't see that very well. Let me try that again. Okay, and there we go. We've done all our stamping for our card. So now it's just time to put it together. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this sit, because I have a tendency to try to work with this too quickly, and then I smear the ink as I'm going. So I'm going to set it aside and give it a chance to dry, but as we put together the other part of our card. So we're going to put these panels to the front panels of our card. So I'm using liquid glue, and the reason I use that is because I'm here in South Texas. We have high humidity, and we used to use the snail. The cards would kind of fall apart after a little bit. So I have ordered the Stamp and Seal, the new stuff, so I haven't practiced with it. I'm not very good at ending it, and so I didn't want to use it for this video, but I do want to kind of see how it works out with the humidity down here. So now add the other panel. Kind of centering it to my card. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to see. It's hard to see when you have to hold your head back so you don't stick it in the camera. All right, now we're going to layer this. We're going to take the Whisper White piece and we're going to put it to a piece of just Jade, which is 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. So we're just making it made a square. Okay. So you take it up. And I'm going to center it. There we go. And now we're going to glue this piece to a piece of mint macaron, which is at 4 by 4. Okay. And then we're going to just kind of center that. Oh, that's one of the problems with liquid glue. It likes to slide when you're trying to put it down. But that's a good thing about it, is that you can still have some time to kind of work with it before it really sets. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we're going to add it to the front of our card, but we need to be very careful that you're not putting glue all over the back of the card, because if you do and you put it down, now you can't open your card. So what you want to do is look and see how you're going to lay it on there. That's what I do, because I have a tendency to put glue on the wrong side. So I'm just going to say, okay, I want it to look like this. So I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to put the glue on this half, but I'm not even going to go halfway, because I would just want to take care that I am not exceeding and going over the panel. All right, so now I'm very carefully going to lay and center my panel on top of my gate. Just make sure it's kind of straight, which wasn't. I don't know if you're like me. I think things are straight and then I look at them later and I'm going, okay, that's not very straight. All right, so there you go. So you can open it up. You can see the glue is not extending over, and that's the most important part of this card. Now I'm going to put the inside in. If I can get the glue to come out. I try not to push it too hard, because then a big glob comes out and then it just gets everywhere. So I do it very lightly. So sometimes it takes me a little bit to get it started, so I don't overdo it. Okay, now it's time to kind of flip it over. I'm going to center that there. And there you go. And you can still see it I should have still let it dry a little bit more. I smeared a little bit of ink there. All right. And that is the card that we made using the Blossoms in Bloom stamp set. And so what I wanted to do is also show you a card that I did stepping it up using the die. And here it is. And I used this, I was just looking for some pattern paper, some DSP that kind of went with the colors that I was doing. And I had this old series, it's retired, but I thought, okay, you know what, it's still good. It has that mint macaron into it. It has kind of a darker green that might kind of go with my pretty peacock. But then after I put the card together, I was like, I don't like that. Let me make my own panels for the card that I'm doing for my video. And so you can see what I did. The only thing I did different is I still use the same kind of layering. I stamped in just Jade, but I kind of did it a stamp off. I cut this piece out in just Jade, okay? But what I did is I really wanted it a darker color. I wanted to have more Pretty Peacock, and I didn't have any Pretty Peacock paper on hand. So what I did is I took the brayer, and after I cut it out, I just kind of inked up my Pretty Peacock, and then I just inked up my dies before I glued them on to my stamped Whisper White. So kind of a cool idea in using your ink to run over cardstock that is already colored, and you can still kind of adjust the color to something that maybe you like. I kind of dressed it up with some pearls, and I used some baker's thread that I had on hand. So anyway, these are our 2 cards using the Blossoms in Bloom stamp set. This is one of my favorite flower sets. I hope you enjoyed this. You can leave some comments below if you have any suggestions to help me improve my videos, or if you have any questions, you can shoot me a comment and I will try to answer it as best I can. Thank you again from my cabin in South Texas. See you later.